How did this guy get a video game? This creepy-eyed behemoth with this gormless mercury-licking grin. How did it happen? And yet it did. Luckily confined to just the two formats, that being the PC running MS-DOS and the Amiga, because you can't let this maniac loose on an 8-bit computer. He's a ruddy loon. He'd pull out my Kempston interface while it was loading something, using his bloody comedic pratfalling, the great clumsy galoot. Mr. Blobby was created by Charlie Adams, a writer for the show Noel's House Party. Yes, Noel, as in Noel Edmonds, the coiffured, bearded ex-DJ and holder of the Red Fate boxes, who was given his own early Saturday entertainment show just 4 years after he had to resign from the other early evening Saturday entertainment show because this happened. Mr. Blobby was invented for the Beadles About stroke candid camera style prank segment called Gotchas. He was presented as a Barney-esque costumed children's character which would give clueless celebrities all kinds of grief. He would chaotically demolish the set and make them feel very uncomfortable indeed. The segment, or rather the character, became very popular, and so he became a part of the main show itself, usually with him acting like a goofball buffoon teen to Noel's disapproving dad as they both resided in the towers at Crinkly Bottom. Then the pink chump spread like some sort of horrendous disease to the rest of BBC's light entertainment programmes, guest starring in stuff like Lovejoy, Keeping Up Appearances, Live and Kicking and The Generation Game. He started shifting a ton of merchandise too, like slippers, dolls, pink lemonade.
Put your penis away.
No.
I'm not going to ask you again. Put your penis away.
I am who I am.
And even had a #1 hit single, top of the charts for 3 weeks no less, which recited his name like he's some sort of cult leader. 3 VHS tapes also came out so parents can entertain their children while doing themselves 10 points of mental damage each time the bugger went into the recorder. God, can you imagine it? Blobby, 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 blobby. Let's put it on again, Dad. He even had 3 Crinkly Bottom themed parks in Somerset, Morecambe and Lowestoft, which looked like the Jolly Green Giant's pubes by the end of the 90s. They were a bit overgrown and no longer used. Don't worry, Jolly Green Giant, I know how you feel.
Ho ho ho.
Green Giant.
And that should be no surprise, as something like Mr. Blobby can really only have a finite lifespan. And so he drifted from public consciousness by the 2000s. Although he consistently keeps appearing for nostalgia-thirsty millennials in various shows. We need to keep an eye on those millennials, you know. The boomers love Mrs. Brown's Boys. Christ knows what Mr. Blobby-driven millennials are going to give us on our tellies while we're gasping our last breaths in a care home. Millennium Interactive released a Mr. Blobby computer game in 1994, some 2 years after the yellow-spotted Tonk's stardom came about. I mean, if the dude can have 3 theme parks, he can sure as balls have a computer game, can't he? The Crazy Frog and Ed the Duck had computer games. Bangers and Mash had a computer game. Mr. Blobby, in retrospect, was obviously going to get a computer game. That's just how this terrible world works. There are 60 levels of platforming fun to be had here, with you controlling all 3 members of Blobby's family. Wait, a family? How did that courtship go? Did they fall over each other breaking shit in a posh restaurant? Did they annoy the other people in the cinema while watching a romantic comedy by throwing around their popcorn and chucking themselves down several sets of seats? I mean, they look kind of similar. Maybe they're related and it's some sort of weird family. Or maybe they just sort of spore off each other like single-cell organisms. They look disgusting enough. Anyway, You, as the entire Blobby family residing in Crinkly Bottom, have witnessed the cursed mist descending across Blobby World that has cursed the land and stolen away its colour. Good grief. It's up to the Blobby family to restore the colour, which they do by colouring the ground with their footsteps in each level. I'm not sure how they do this. Are they sort of like slugs and secrete some sort of weird juice from the soles of their plates of meat? If you clear enough zones with your emulsion-filled souls, then you will finish the level and are thrown a load of bonus materials by unknown forces who like a bit of colour in their lives. The great camp deities giving you food rewards for making it all look fabulous. Obviously, it's not going to be that easy to do this ground recolouring business because various Euro platformer enemies are strutting about not liking your hue restoring larks. And for sure, it is definitely a Euro platformer given the absolute screen filling junk you can pick up, including hats which give you various abilities like being able to jump slightly higher. You've got custard pies to defend yourself with, but their range isn't brilliant. But once you make contact with the enemy via the custard pie, Blobby seems to go over and eat them when they're covered in custard, which is incredibly disturbing. Was he eyeing up our children as potential snacks? Does anyone know where this creature came from? You can get other weapons too, like a water pistol, and you have a replenishable amount of spin attacks that make you invincible for a short while. So yes, very, very Euro platformer. And well, it was by Millennium who had developed the James Pond series, Kid Gloves and Pinky for the 16-bit computers. They also programmed this, a Super Nintendo game based on those absolutely horrible troll dolls that your sister probably had. Ugly bloody things, kill them all with fire. This is Super Troll Island, and it came out before Mr. Blobby. And well, it looks very similar, doesn't it? Even the base of this tree, which looks like Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, Mr. Blobby is just a reskin of Super Troll Islands. Same plot, same music, same gameplay, nearly identical graphics. Sloppy seconds from a SNES platformer that isn't going to give Super Mario World or Mega Man X any sleepless nights. So how does this translate to the Amiga or PC, where, to be fair, we're operating at a kind of lower level in terms of platformer quality? I mean, Zool? Really? It's not really Sonic or Mario, is it? It is, to use the parlance of Generation Z, mid. Ostensibly, it's trying to create a similar feel to something like New Zealand Story or Rainbow Islands, with small levels which do get a fair bit bigger later on, and enemies on repetitive patrols causing you and the corpulent family all kinds of grief. It's using some clever ideas and neat touches, but it's not doing anything particularly well. Controls are occasionally frustratingly slippery, not helped by the frequent appearance of very, very small ledges, and they don't twin well with the out-of-control inertia, as Blobby and his family are very swift for people with the same frame as Donald Trump. It's a long game, but it's fairly easy, and your staying power will largely depend on how much you can cope with its diarrhea on a spade's speed and slipperiness, and the fact that the game shows you all it has to offer within its first few levels. Myself, I found it about as tiresome as the irritating Blancmange himself. The One reviewed it in January 1995 and gave it a 33%. They said that the level layouts are incredibly yawn-esque, doing nothing to detract from the boring gameplay. Amiga Power also reviewed this in January 1995. They said, stunningly, not the unmitigated disaster you'd reasonably expect, but it's not very good either. They gave Mr. Blobby 37%. Doesn't sound like they think it's an unmitigated disaster, does it? Amiga Action reviewed it in late 1994. They said it's difficult to see this appealing to anyone but the very young, but even they may be put off by the unnecessarily frustrating gameplay. it was a 46% from them. So Mr. Blobby, not very well received. Noel Edmonds, please tell this fella to blob off. So what's next? Well, as we're getting a very elderly Indiana Jones in the cinema in 2023, how about we look at his more formative years in the title The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, based on the TV series of the same name. Sounds good? Fantastic. I'll see you back here soon. But until then, like, subscribe, and Kay, thanks, bye.